They handed me an empty box, wrapped in gold foil paper, tied with a red ribbon. Beautiful from the outside, like everything in this family. But when I pulled the lid off, nothing. No letter. No gift. Just air. I looked up from the table slowly. My mother smirked, her eyes flicking toward my niece, who was currently unwrapping her third gift, a personalized iPad case with her name stitched into it. "Your daughter doesn't need a party," my mother had said earlier that week when I offered to host a small celebration. "She's not the type to care about attention," she added, dismissively. Then she turned around and bought a 4-tier cake for my sister's child. Even after all these years, they still believed love had a hierarchy, and I was always last. I said nothing as I closed the empty box. My daughter, Ava, sitting quietly beside me, gave my hand a small squeeze. She didn't understand what just happened. Not fully. But I could see it in her eyes, the question. Why us? My father, ever the master of timing, raised his glass and chuckled. "Well, you never really sacrifice yourself for others anyway, Nina." The laughter that followed was light, effortless, as if what just happened wasn't cruel, as if the entire moment wasn't laced with humiliation. That was the thing about my family. They always knew how to dress cruelty up as tradition. I smiled politely, stayed seated, ate my slice of dry, overly sweet cake, watched my niece dance with her new headphones while Ava played with the same coloring book she brought from home. And in that moment, I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I didn't fight for my place at the table. I just decided. That night, after I tucked Ava into bed, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started untying all the threads I had used to keep this family comfortable. I canceled the vacation we were supposed to take next month, the one I paid for in full, even though I was only invited as a backup babysitter. I logged into the joint account I shared with my parents, the one I'd filled steadily for years with contributions for emergencies, groceries, birthday parties that somehow never included me. I transferred every cent out. Then I closed it. Next, I reviewed the paperwork for the car, the one I bought under my name, which they drove around like it was theirs. Insurance, payments, registration. All me. I put it up for sale the next morning. Within 72 hours, I had done what they never expected. I left them the same way they had always left me. Silently, but completely. Because when someone hands you an empty box, they're not giving you a joke. They're giving you permission to walk away. My name is Nina, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because the day they laughed over an empty gift box, they had no idea what I'd take away next. My name has never been Nina, the favorite. It's never even been Nina, the respected. In my family, I've always been Nina, the provider. Nina, the afterthought. Nina, the one who pays. Growing up, I watched my sister get everything handed to her, birthday parties with ponies, designer clothes before she could spell Gucci, our parents beaming like she'd hung the stars. Me? I got sensible shoes, a savings bond, and silence. They never said they loved me less. They didn't have to. Love lived in action, and all theirs went in one direction. When my sister dropped out of college, my parents said, "She just needs a break." When I got a scholarship, they said, "Good. One less bill to worry about." When she had her baby at 21, the whole family rallied around her like she was royalty. I bought her diapers, paid her rent, covered her car note for a year, all without being asked. They didn't thank me. They expected it. Because I had a good job. Because I was responsible. Because I didn't need as much. But that's the thing about being the responsible one. They start treating you like a resource, not a person. The first time I paid off my mother's maxed out credit card, she told people it was handled. When I bought her new eyeglasses, she said my sister picked the frames. When I took Ava, my own daughter, on her first vacation, I had to lie and say it was a work trip. Because otherwise, they would have guilted me into taking the whole family. And I would have. Because I wanted their approval so badly, I kept giving. And giving. Until I was broke in ways no one could see. They never knew how often I skipped dinners to make those car payments. They never asked what I wanted for my birthday. They never noticed that the only reason Ava had a proper backpack was because I stopped buying new clothes for myself. But I never complained, because I thought being quiet about it made me strong. It didn't. It made me invisible. And the worst part? I let them. Until the night of the empty box. Until I watched my parents beam while my niece unwrapped electronics and gift cards and custom jewelry, all while Ava clapped politely beside her with nothing in her lap. Until my father laughed and called me selfish, as I sat there with an unpaid trip in his name, a car in his driveway with my money behind it, and a child who only ever got secondhand attention from the people who claimed to love us both. That's when something in me snapped. Not loud, not angry, just quiet and final. I realized I wasn't the backbone of this family. I was the doormat. And the moment you realize that, you stop opening the door. So yes, I locked the accounts. Yes, I canceled the trip. Yes, I sold the car. But no, I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it out of self-respect. Because the girl they forgot? She remembered herself. I've swallowed 1,000 little betrayals in my life. I've smiled through dismissive comments, forgave slights disguised as jokes, and nodded politely while my parents turned every milestone of mine into a footnote in someone else's story. But that box? That empty, beautiful, intentional box? It was the last time I would make myself smaller to keep their egos full. Let me explain how we got there. Ava was turning 7. I'd saved for months. Not for anything extravagant. Just a small gathering with a cake, some paper crowns, and the joy she deserved. I told my mom I wanted to host it at her house. Just family. Just love. She frowned and said, "Your daughter doesn't need a party. She's not that kind of child." I didn't even know what that meant. She said it like Ava was less deserving because she wasn't loud or demanding. Because she was polite. Soft. Observant. Exactly like I was. Instead, my mom proposed a joint dinner with the whole family, meaning my sister and her daughter. She promised it would be fair. Equal gifts. Equal cake. I wanted to believe her. Because I always wanted to believe her. So I canceled the party. I told Ava we'd celebrate with Grandma and Grandpa instead, that they were planning something special. She nodded. She always trusts me. That night, I watched my sister's daughter tear through gift after gift while Ava waited her turn patiently, the way I taught her. There was no second cake. No song with her name in it. Just that gold-wrapped box they handed me with a smug little smile. I had to pretend I didn't already know what was coming. And still, when I lifted the lid and saw it was empty, it punched the air out of my chest. Ava leaned closer. "Mama, did they forget something inside?" I stared into her eyes, wide, hopeful, and I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because I knew exactly what they'd say. It was just a joke. You take things too seriously. Don't make a scene. You always ruin everything. So I smiled. I hugged Ava and said, "It's okay, baby. I already got the best gift, you." She beamed. And they all thought I meant it. That night, after I put her to bed, I sat in the living room with the empty box in my lap and stared at it like it might open itself and reveal a lesson I'd missed. But it didn't. There was no lesson left to learn. Just the truth. They had never planned to give Ava anything. They had never planned to treat her like she mattered. And they certainly hadn't changed. That box was a mirror. And I saw it clearly now. I wasn't being excluded by mistake. I was being excluded by design. Because I was the reminder of everything they didn't want to face. That I worked harder than all of them. That I gave more. That I never demanded a spotlight. Only to be seen. And still, they laughed. Still, they handed me nothing. So I stopped giving them everything. That night I made a list. Not of people to confront, but of things to take back. I didn't scream. I didn't post cryptic quotes. I didn't cut them off. I just started to disappear. The morning after the dinner, while they were still gloating over their perfect evening, I opened my laptop and began what I now call Operation Vanish. First, the trip. A family vacation had been planned for the fall, a beach house rental, 2 cars, an Airbnb stocked with groceries. I had paid for everything. The agreement. of course, was that they'd reimburse me in pieces. A lie I'd accepted for years. I went to the reservation page and hit cancel. Full refund. Straight to my private account. Then I texted the family group chat. Vacations off. Personal reasons. No one replied. Next, the bank. There was a joint emergency account I opened 3 years ago. It started as a safety net for my parents, a shared pot I quietly kept filled to cover surprise bills, medication, or unexpected expenses that always seemed to fall on me. I drained it, moved every cent to an account in Ava's name. Then I closed the original. 2 hours later, I received a text from my mother. Did something happen to the bank account? I left it on read. Third, the car. My parents drove a vehicle I bought under my name. Payments came from my account. Insurance?
Mine.
Registration?
Mine.
The only thing they contributed was gas sometimes. I called the dealership. The payoff amount was less than I expected. I sold it the same week. I never told them. The following Friday, my dad called. Straight to voicemail. Then a message. Hey, the car isn't in the driveway. Did you take it to get serviced? I blocked the number. By Sunday, I was nearly done. I had stopped babysitting my niece. Stopped answering questions in the family group chat. Stopped replying to my sister's casual, "Can you help me with?" texts. I didn't even announce my exit. Because that's the thing about people who only value you when you're useful. The second you stop giving, they start noticing. Not you, your absence. The silence. The missed favors. The drying well. But I didn't vanish from the world. I became louder in the places that mattered. Ava and I had more time. More money. More peace. We cooked together at night. Took walks without interruptions. Read books. Watched cartoons. Laughed. Really laughed, without checking phones for someone else's demand. One night, she looked up at me and said, "Mama, you look happier. Did something good happen?" I kissed her forehead and said, "Yes, baby. Something very good happened." I stopped being the background character in everyone else's story. I stopped financing the spotlight for people who never clapped for me. And most of all, I finally started choosing us. It started like clockwork. Monday morning, 9:42 a.m., a text from my sister. "Did you take the car? Mom and Dad are freaking out." I muted the conversation. Then came the emails. My father, the same man who once said I never sacrifice for others, was now requesting access to the shared account. Except it wasn't there anymore.
Gone. Closed.
Emptied without a whisper. By Wednesday, my mother sent a voice note. Dramatic, quivering, classic. "We're trying to pay the electric bill. The card isn't working. What's going on?" Then the cherry on top. A Facebook post from my sister. Just vague enough to avoid admitting fault, but specific enough to bait sympathy. It's crazy how one person's decision can leave a whole family struggling. We're all just trying our best. Prayers appreciated. The comments rolled in. "Stay strong, love. Some people are so selfish." Is this about Nina? I thought she was helping with your parents. I didn't engage. Didn't comment. Didn't react. I simply watched. Watched the panic unfold like a play I'd seen 100 times before. Only this time, I wasn't cast as the supporting character. This time, I was in the audience. And I wasn't clapping. By Friday, I got a text from my dad. No more small talk. No more pride. We're not asking for much. Just help us get through the month. I don't know what's going on with you lately. I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about how many months I got through without their help. How many nights I chose between dinner and gas. How many times I smiled through exhaustion so Ava wouldn't feel it. And yet, not once, had they ever asked me how I was. I typed a reply. Simple. Final. If I'm such a burden, I figured you'd be relieved to be free of me. Then I blocked him. Because here's the truth. People who only love you when you're useful don't know how to handle you when you're whole. And for the first time, I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't overdrawn. I wasn't financing the fantasy of a perfect family anymore. I was just free. Ava and I took a small weekend trip. Just us. A little cabin by the lake, warm cocoa, board games, and real, honest joy. No guilt. No fake gratitude. No phone buzzing every 5 minutes with someone else's emergency disguised as an urgent favor. She built a snow angel that looked like it had wings. Mama, she asked, do you think people get tired of giving too much? I blinked. Why do you ask that? She shrugged. You used to look tired all the time, but now you look lighter. I hugged her so tight she squeaked. She was right. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I had just put down a weight that was never mine to carry. And the people watching it slip out of their hands? They weren't confused. They were panicking. Because the woman they once drained was gone. And the silence she left behind? It was louder than all their demands combined. It didn't take long for silence to turn to entitlement. By the end of the week, my mother called me from 4 different numbers. One voicemail stuck out. You're hurting your family. You know that, right? We've always tried our best for you. Don't punish us just because your sister gets more attention. That was the line. Not we're sorry. Not you're right. Just don't punish us. As if all I'd done was throw a tantrum. As if their years of erasure could be explained away by a shrug and the phrase, we did our best. Then came the text from my sister. Are you done sulking yet? You know you're making this harder than it needs to be. Everyone's suffering because you're acting brand new. Acting brand new. That was her favorite line. She used it years ago when I bought my first car without asking Dad to co-sign. She used it again when I got my promotion and moved into a nicer apartment. And now, she was using it because I stopped being their wallet. So this time I answered. Not with a rant. Not with rage. But with precision. I waited until morning. Let them all stew overnight. Then I opened the family group chat, the same one they only used when they needed things, and typed. If I'm the selfish one, why was I the only one paying for everything? If I'm the problem, why didn't you notice until the money stopped? If I was never the favorite, why did you assume I'd always take care of you? Then I added, the favorite daughter is in a bank. Ask her to cover the bills. Ask her to return the car. Ask her to plan the next trip. I'm done. I muted the group after that. Didn't wait for replies.
Didn't care what they said.
Because it wasn't about them anymore. It was about Ava watching me reclaim my voice. It was about finally showing her that boundaries aren't mean, they're necessary. And I'll admit, it felt good. Not petty. Not spiteful. Just clean. Later that day, I got a text from my cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. I saw your sister's post. I just want to say, good for you. You've been their crutch for way too long. I smiled. Because behind every selfish daughter is a family who relied on her silence. But I wasn't silent anymore. That evening, Ava helped me frost cupcakes we made from scratch. We danced in the kitchen, just us, messy and laughing, no audience needed. And while the rest of them were passing blame like a bowl of stale chips, I was finally passing peace around my own table. No more guilt. No more explanations. Just this. They could no longer afford the daughter they threw away because she'd finally invested in herself. The emotional punch, the line that ends it all. It was just after midnight when I heard it. Muffled sobs. I was cleaning up the living room. Ava had fallen asleep on the couch after our movie night when I heard the crying through the thin walls of our shared apartment complex. At first, I didn't register it. But then I heard the voice. Familiar. Shaking. My mother's. She was on the phone. I couldn't hear the other person, but her words cut through the silence like a blade dipped in regret. I don't know what happened. She just shut everything off. We didn't mean to hurt her. We just didn't think she'd go this far. Everything's gone. The money. The car. The vacation. It's all gone. My chest rose, then fell. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not really. I just felt the finality of it. They finally realized the well had dried, and they weren't prepared for a life where I wasn't carrying the weight. Then came my father's voice, quieter, tighter. She's being cruel. And then the pause. Then the sound of my mother crying harder, gasping between the words. Why would she do this to us? I stood at the door, hand resting on the knob. There was a time I would have melted right there. Opened the door. Offered comfort. Softened my spine to hold theirs up again. But that version of me? She was gone. I knocked once. The crying stopped instantly. Then I opened the door just a crack, stepped into the hallway, and looked directly at my mother, slumped on the bottom stair, phone in her lap, eyes swollen. She stared up at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. I walked down one step. Just one. Just enough to look her in the eye and say, "Ask your favorite daughter." Her mouth opened slightly, as if to protest. But I didn't let her. I turned around, walked back inside, locked the door behind me. Not in anger, not in spite,
In peace.
because there's something powerful about not needing to yell to be heard. There's something divine in watching people sit in the emptiness they once handed you. I poured myself a glass of water, covered Ava with a blanket, brushed a curl off her cheek and whispered, "You'll never have to beg for love." And I meant it. They had called me selfish for choosing silence, but they never saw what it cost me to stay. Now, the cost belonged to them, and the invoice was past due. It's been 3 months since the empty box. 3 months since I shut every open tab I'd left in their lives. Accounts, favors, financing, forgiveness. And in that time, something wild happened. I started to breathe differently. Slower. Fuller. Like I finally had lungs that belonged to me. I didn't return the messages. Didn't show up for the fake peace offerings. Didn't respond to the vague social media posts meant to guilt me back into place. I just lived. I watched Ava thrive, really thrive. She laughs louder now. She dances in the kitchen without flinching. She draws without asking, "Do you think they'll like this?" Because we don't live for them anymore. We live for each other. And one day, as we baked together a small cake, just because she asked me, "Mama, do you still love Grandma?" I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I finally had a different one. "I love the version of her I hoped she could be," I said. "But sometimes, baby, the best love you give is the kind you give to yourself." She nodded slowly and smiled like she understood more than a 7-year-old should. And maybe she did, because she saw it all. She saw me exhausted from giving. She saw me forgotten in the middle of giving. And now, she sees me whole because I stopped. I used the vacation money they never repaid to take Ava to a mountain town for her spring break. We hiked.
We sang.
We made our own traditions. I used the refund from the family trip to start an online baking business. Ava helped me name it The Second Slice. Because that's what we're doing now. Living the life we should have had. The slice we were always too polite to ask for. Now ours, and full of flavor. Orders are growing. People love it. And I love that the first cake I ever baked without their approval became the first step toward freedom. As for my parents, their world is smaller now. No more free rides. No more hidden support. And the sister they prioritized? Turns out, favoritism doesn't pay rent. Last I heard, they're still waiting for someone to help them catch up on bills. But I'm not their someone anymore. I'm the woman they underestimated. The one they handed an empty box and expected to smile.
And I did. But now?
Now I fill my own boxes. With joy. With peace. With enough. We celebrated Ava's 8th birthday last weekend. Just us. A few friends. Laughter that wasn't forced. And as she blew out her candles, she whispered to me, "This was the best birthday ever." I hugged her and thought,
Yes.
because it wasn't borrowed from someone else's approval. It was built with love. Our love. The kind that doesn't come with conditions or comparisons. Just care. They handed me an empty box and laughed. But they didn't know I was already full. I gave them everything until I realized the best gift was keeping it for myself.
Your mom would have loved this if she hadn't flaked on being alive. That's what my stepmother, Diane, said at the rehearsal dinner into a mic after her second glass of wine. My dad laughed. So did a few others. But the silence that followed from my side of the room was louder than any toast. I stared at them, the man who raised me and the woman who replaced the one person who never made me feel small. They stood under fairy lights beside the wedding cake I'd paid for, mocking my late mother like it was a game. And that was the moment I knew. There wouldn't be a wedding tomorrow. Not for me. Not with them in the front row. Not with a father who once swore on my mother's hospital bed that he'd always protect her memory, then sold it off to entertain his new wife's friends. I didn't say a word that night. I didn't cry. I didn't confront them. I excused myself before dessert, went back to my hotel room, took off the engagement ring, and opened my laptop. Within the hour, I had removed my name from their mortgage account, the one I co-signed 2 years ago to help them get a better rate when Dad's credit was in the toilet. I also canceled every automatic bill linked to my account: water, gas, cable, HOA security. And I sent one text to my ex-fiancé, Brian. I'm not walking into a family that spits on my mother's memory. We're done. No ceremony, no speech, just clarity. By morning, there were missed calls from every direction. Brian, Diane, my father, even one of Diane's friends, texting to ask if I was overreacting. I wasn't reacting at all. I was done. At 9 a.m., I walked into the wedding venue, pulled the planner aside, and canceled everything in person. I paid the penalty fees on the spot, told the florist to donate the arrangements, handed the caterer a tip, and told them to take the food to the local shelter. And I left. Now, 72 hours later, I've received 5 voicemails from my father, 3 crying messages from Diane, and 1 panic knock at my door. I haven't answered any of them, because they weren't laughing now, and I wasn't saving them this time. My mother, Evelyn, died when I was 16. Ovarian cancer, the kind that creeps in quietly and doesn't wait for goodbyes. She was gone within 6 months of diagnosis. 1 minute she was laughing with me in the kitchen, making burnt lasagna from memory. The next, she was losing her hair in a sterile room while my dad started showing up late to the hospital. He didn't take her death well, but he didn't fall apart either. He redirected. He became colder, efficient, a man who filed grief away like an overdue tax form. He packed up my mother's things within 2 weeks of the funeral. Her clothes, her books, the paintings she'd made when she still believed in joy, all boxed up and stored to keep the house neutral. I cried when I saw him painting over the yellow walls in the kitchen. Too loud, he said. We need clean lines now. I didn't know then that clean lines meant making room for someone else. Her name was Diane. She was the woman from the mortgage office, the one who helped refinance our house 6 months after Mom died. Blonde, sharp, perfectly polished. She didn't like clutter or emotional heaviness, as she once told me while removing my mother's old photos from the hallway. By the time I graduated high school, Diane was living with us. By college, they were married. Diane never pretended to like me. She liked control. She liked throwing suggestions about how I should dress, who I should date, what my career should be. She called my mother fragile and soft. Once she said, I admire your mom's kindness, but she wasn't exactly built for the real world, was she? I nearly walked out that night, but I stayed. For my dad. I stayed through the birthdays he forgot, through the holidays where my mother's name was never mentioned, through the dinner conversations where Diane dominated every subject and Dad followed her cue like a trained dog. I stayed when they asked me to co-sign the mortgage on their new place, saying it would be temporary, just until Dad rebuilt his credit. I stayed when they wanted me to host Thanksgiving at my place, but asked me to avoid cooking anything your mom used to make. It's too heavy. And I stayed when Brian proposed, and Diane offered to plan the wedding because you don't have a mom to do that for you, and I know what I'm doing. But I think I knew deep down, the minute I let her touch my mother's memory with those claws, it was only a matter of time before they went for the throat. They waited until the rehearsal dinner. They didn't expect me to walk away, and they definitely didn't expect me to take everything I'd given back. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't come with screaming or slammed doors. It comes with eye rolls when you speak, with polite corrections in front of strangers, with being treated like a guest in your own memories. By the time the wedding planning hit full speed, I had already started seeing the cracks. The first was when Diane accidentally left my mom off the photo slideshow we'd created for the reception. I had uploaded childhood photos, Beach days, birthday parties, the last Mother's Day we spent together. The final edit came back with Diane's spa weekends and group shots of her extended family, but not one photo of Evelyn. When I asked about it, she waved her hand. The vibe needed to be more celebratory. Your mother's pictures felt a bit dated. Dated. Like Evelyn was a trend that had gone out of style. Dad didn't say anything, just rubbed his temple and said, "Let's not make this a big deal." It was always me making it a big deal. Like when I told Diane I wanted to wear my mother's earrings, delicate sapphire studs she wore her own wedding, and she replied, "Oh, those tiny things." I was going to surprise you with something elegant from my collection. Like when she insisted on choosing the florist because, frankly, your taste is a little muted. Like when my father laughed when she said it. I started having dreams. My mom standing at the edge of the ceremony, silent. Watching. Distant. Fading. I brushed them off. Told myself I was being overly sensitive. That families are messy and weddings are stressful. Until one night, 2 weeks before the rehearsal dinner, I overheard a conversation in the kitchen. Diane was on the phone. It's not my fault she still worships a woman who died over a decade ago. Honestly, Evelyn was weak. Sweet, sure, but useless. I'm the one cleaning up the mess she left behind. And then laughter. My father's. Not a loud one, but the soft, complicit kind, the kind that says, "This is fine." I stood outside the doorway for a full minute. Didn't speak. Didn't cry. Just listened. And something in me shifted. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to start asking myself why I was walking into a marriage with people who couldn't even pretend to respect the woman who made me who I am. Enough to realize that love without loyalty is just performance. And I had performed long enough. I didn't walk out of that rehearsal dinner with rage in my chest. I walked out with a checklist. By the time I reached my hotel room, I had already decided I wasn't going to cry or explain or beg someone to see the damage they were doing. I had done that for years. I'd played the dutiful daughter, the peacekeeper, the one who understood. They never understood me, but they understood what I gave them: financial security, social status, someone to blame when things got messy. So I decided to give them the one thing they really deserved: silence and consequences. The first thing I did was log into the mortgage portal. I still had co-signer access. 2 years ago, they couldn't qualify for the house they wanted on their own. My dad's credit was still wrecked from a failed investment Diane had pushed him into, and her income was complicated. So I added my name just to help. They never once missed a payment, because I set up auto pay for my account for the first 6 months. And when I tried to remove myself last year, Diane called me dramatic, and my dad said, "Just give it time. We're family." But family ended at that microphone. So I submitted the official request to remove my name as co-signer and owner. My credit was no longer their crutch. Next, I went through every bill tied to my account. Gas, electric, water, internet, HOA, security system. I'd helped them set all of it up. They weren't tech savvy, and I handled the paperwork, which meant most of it still in my name, still billed to me. I canceled all of it in under 30 minutes. I didn't leave them in danger, just discomfort. The mortgage would now be reassessed without my support. Their rate would spike. Their utilities would shut down unless they noticed in time. And their beautiful life, the one they built by burying my mother's memory, would finally cost them something. Then I sent one text to the venue coordinator. "Wedding canceled. Deposit is yours. Please donate the food to a shelter and return the florals if possible. I'll cover penalties. No questions." The next morning, I woke up to missed calls. My father's name, Diane's, my ex-fiancée's mother, all blinking on my screen like alarms I no longer needed to answer. And when the first knock came at my door that afternoon, I didn't move. Because the door they slammed shut at that dinner, I wasn't reopening it. The first real fallout hit at 10:47 a.m. the next morning. A voicemail from Diane, voice sharp and cracking. "You petty little girl. The power's been shut off. Your father has a heart condition. Do you even care?" She didn't mention the rehearsal dinner, or her joke, or the look I gave her as I left the room without touching dessert. Just the bills, the things I used to manage. That afternoon, the venue manager left me a kind voicemail thanking me for the donation. The food had gone to a shelter downtown. The floral company had repurposed the arrangements for a hospice wing. Even the DJ, bless him, said he understood. Meanwhile, I got a frantic call from my dad's accountant. Did you really remove your name from the mortgage? This affects their interest rate, their eligibility. Did you think this through? I did, I said, very carefully. There was a long pause, then a quiet, well, damn. By day 2, the water was off. By day 3, Diane posted a cryptic quote on Facebook. Some daughters are born ungrateful. Some fathers live long enough to regret raising them. She deleted it 2 hours later after someone, probably one of her church friends, commented, "Didn't you make a joke about her dead mother at a dinner party? Maybe reflect a bit." The irony was that I hadn't told anyone. No mass texts, no social media posts, no revenge monologue. But people talk. People always talk when someone so carefully polished starts to crack. On day 4, my father showed up at my door. No call, no warning. Just stood there, sunken, a man who had finally run out of control. He knocked once, then again. I didn't open it, but I watched from the kitchen, quiet, unmoved. He left a letter in the mailbox. It was handwritten. I didn't mean for it to go that far. We were trying to be funny. She got carried away. I shouldn't have laughed. Can we talk? There was no apology to my mother. Just excuses. Just regret that something broke. He still didn't understand. They didn't just mock my mother. They erased her. And now they wanted grace from the daughter they taught to stay quiet. But I wasn't quiet anymore. And I wasn't coming to the door. They asked me to come to the house. Not through a call, not even a voicemail. Just a letter slipped under my door. Trembling handwriting I recognized immediately. My father's. We need to talk. Please. We can't fix this without you. Fix. That was always his word. Fix it. Cover it. Patch the hole. Paint the wall. Forget what was underneath. But I went. Not for them, for me. To make sure I didn't carry 1 ounce of this forward. When I arrived, the house was colder. Not just emotionally, literally. The power was still off. The heat wasn't running. They hadn't figured out how to re-establish the accounts yet, and the silence in the hallways felt thicker than drywall. Diane sat in the living room, bundled in a coat, her nails chipped, eyes puffy. She didn't say hello. My dad stood beside the fireplace, paper bills in his hand like a child holding a failing report card. "I've contacted the bank," he said. "They said the interest rate jumped. We might lose the house." I nodded. "You might. Can you just co-sign again? Just until we stabilize." My gaze didn't flinch. "No." Diane let out a breath. "This is punishment. You're punishing us for a joke." "No," I said calmly. "You're feeling what happens when someone who supported you stops pretending you deserve it." Her voice rose. "You think your mother was a saint? She left us with nothing. I built your father back from the ground up." "She died of cancer," I said flatly. "And you made a punchline out of her memory." For a moment, no one spoke. Then my dad said she wouldn't have wanted this. I looked him dead in the eyes. She wouldn't have wanted me to stay silent either. I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. Inside, my official notice of disassociation from the mortgage, a list of every account I canceled, and a single handwritten note. "I gave you everything I had. You didn't lose a daughter. You spent her." He didn't open it. He just stared at it like it might catch fire. "I hope you figure it out," I said. "But it won't be through me." And I walked out, not with satisfaction, not with hate, but with nothing left in my hands, and everything still intact in my heart. I thought freedom would feel like a wave crashing, but it didn't. It felt like stillness, the kind you only notice after years of noise. After walking out of my father's house, I didn't rush to rebuild anything. I took time. I deleted old voicemails, cleared photos from my phone that only reminded me of who I had to be to survive around them. I moved into a small apartment with quiet neighbors, white walls, and a kitchen just big enough to cook the recipes my mother used to love. I made her lemon soup first. She used to say, The secret is adding the zest last after the boil. You don't want the flavor to disappear. I thought about how she lived her whole life like that, quiet, gentle, but never losing her essence. It was my turn now. I started volunteering at a legal resource center for women, helping people untangle financial dependency, debt traps, and family coercion. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't loud, but it was real. The women I met reminded me of myself. Polished on the outside, caged within. Some were trying to leave bad relationships. Others were just trying to believe they were allowed to want more. One woman, a widowed single mom, broke down when we helped her reclaim the deed to her home from in-laws trying to force her out. "You saved me," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, you just stopped waiting for them to." At night, I walked along the lake near my apartment. No wedding ring, no fiancé, no title, just me, and the ghost of the girl who once begged to be included in rooms that weren't worthy of her. And for the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was living. On my own terms. A month after I walked out of my father's house, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a photo album, dusty old. The leather cracked, the binding frayed. I recognized it instantly. It was my mother's. The one Diane had boxed up years ago and said was too emotionally loaded for the living room. It had pictures of my mom holding me as a baby, her laughing in the garden, her, and my dad slow dancing barefoot in the kitchen. Little glimpses of softness the world never got to see. Tucked between the pages was a note. Just one line. "I was wrong. I'm sorry, Dad." No signature. No plea. Just paper and ink and finally, silence used the right way. I didn't call him. Not out of spite, but because some apologies aren't meant to reopen a door. They're meant to close it properly. That night, I made tea and sat on the floor, flipping through the album slowly. Page by page, I rebuilt a woman they tried to erase. Not just my mother. Me. The version of me that had stayed quiet to be acceptable. The version that co-signed mortgages and swallowed disrespect just to keep the peace. That woman was gone. And in her place, someone who didn't ask to be respected, but expected it. Someone who didn't mistake silence for strength, but used silence to set boundaries. Someone who remembered her mother not as a shadow, but as the spark. I placed the photo album on the shelf by the window. Not hidden, not archived, visible. Then I opened my journal and wrote one final line to close this chapter. I wasn't the one who walked away from the family. I was the one who finally stopped pretending it was still mine. And with that, I put the pen down. Not out of bitterness, but peace. Because letting go isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the beginning of everything else.